everyone, it's Miss Carrie today, and what we're going to do today is we're going to talk about box and whisker plots. And I have two examples that I'm going to go over with you because even though the process is the same, there's just something that's a little bit different about each of these. And so I want to show you two different examples. So I've done a little bit of prep work, and my advice to you would be is that you grab a piece of paper, pencil, and work these with me, okay? The prep work that I've done is we have our set of data on the first one, which is about sodas drank in 1 week. And when we make box and whisker plots, we're using a median. And so what I've already done is I've taken my data and I've put it in order from least to greatest. Okay? And the other thing I've already done is I have my number line ready. And so I have my minimum, my maximum values, and I use those values to create my number line. So I already have that done on both of our examples, so it would save us a little bit of time. But if you want to work this along with me, just pause the video and get your stuff done, and then you'll be ready to go with me. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is find the median. And so when we find our median, we mark from end to end. So let's find our median. Okay, so we have 2 in the middle. And so when we find our median, we would add and divide by 2. And so when you do that, you get 5.5. I don't know if you can see that very well or not. Okay, so that's our median. It's also called quartile 2. So I'm going to put a Q2 on there. And it's also called the middle quartile. Oops. And yes, you need to know all of these labels. You need to know that not only is this the median, it's quartile 2, and it's the middle quartile. Okay, so then what we're going to do next, we're going to find the median of the lower half and the median of the upper half, okay? So we've already divided our data in half. We have 50% over here, 50% over here. So on this one, using our lower half, we're going to include the 5 because our median was 2 numbers. So we include the 5 with this half and the 6 with this half. So when we find the next median, it's 2, okay, and that 2 is called quartile 1, or the lower quartile. Okay, quartile 1 or the lower quartile. And this 1 on the end is important. It's the minimum or the lower extreme. Okay, again, you've got to know these vocabulary words. Okay, all right, so we took our lower half, split it in half, found our quartile 1, identified our minimum. Now we're going to do the same with the upper half. So we get a 7 for our median of the upper half, and that's called quartile 3. And the upper quartile. Okay. Then we want to identify our largest number, which is our maximum or the upper extreme. Okay? So we have all of our numbers that we need. We have 5 numbers: the minimum, the lower quartile, the middle quartile, the upper quartile, and the maximum. You need all 5 numbers in order to make your box and whisker plot. So first, we're going to graph those numbers that we just found. Not on the number line, but up above the number line. So my 1, I'm going to come up above my number line, my 2, and you want to make sure you're lining these up as best you can. It doesn't have to be perfect, but as best you can along a straight line. 5.5, 7, and 12. Okay, so I have all 5 dots. And the first part of our box and whisker plot we're going to do are, I always do the whiskers first. So the whiskers are, it's the outside dot to the inside dot, the one next to it. The outside one into the one next to it. Okay? And then our 3 interior dots make up the box. So we're going to make a box. And then we're going to draw a line through the median. Okay? And our last thing we want to do is put a title on it. So I'm going to use my title. And that is our box and whisker plot. Now, there's a couple of things I want to talk about that you need to know about the box and whisker plot and the data. Okay? When we found our median, we divided our data into half, right? So that means that this part was 50% of the data, and this part was 50% of the data. Okay? So then we took our data and divided it in half again. So that means from here to here is 25%, and from here to here is 25%. Those two 25s make up the 50. From here to here is 25%, and from here to the 12 is 25%. And these two 25% make up this 50%. Okay? So what that looks like on your box and whisker plot is the whisker from here to here is 25% of your data. Okay? And so from this whisker to this whisker is 25%. All right? On the box, each section of the box is 25%. So this part and this part are each 25%. Okay, so then what that means is the box itself, just the box, which is called it's a big name, interquartile range. Say that again, interquartile range. And they abbreviate that by IQR. And so the box is 50% of the data. Okay? Which would be from this part to this part. That's your interquartile range, 50%. I know this is a lot to take in. That's why I did some prep work, so we could talk about other things. Okay? So you need to know about these percents. It's really important when reading your box and whisker plot. So if I were to ask you what percent of the data is larger than 7, you would say 25%. If I said what percent of the data is smaller than 7, you would say 75%. Or what percent of the data makes up the whiskers? Well, I have 25% of the whisker here and 25% here. So the whiskers make up 50% of the data. Okay, it's very important that you understand our percents and how your box is broke down, because you'll need to answer questions based off the box and whisker plot. You need to know this center dot is your median. Okay? All right, and then what your other ones are, you know, this one is your quartile 1, quartile 2, quartile 3. You got to know all your parts. There's a lot of vocabulary with this lesson. All right, I'm going to move my camera so that we can do problem number 2. All right, so on problem number 2, again, I've done some prep work here. We have our data that's about miles ran per day. I have put my data in order from least to greatest. And based off of my data, I have my number line ready to go. So that this is going to save us a little bit of time. All right, so let's start out with finding the median. All right. I'm just marking off end for end. Now this time I only have just the one number in the middle, unlike problem number 1 where we had the 2 and had to average. Okay, so this one's just a little bit different. So 5 is our median. It's also quartile 2, which is the middle quartile. Okay. All right, so now we're going to find the median for the lower quartile. And since we only had one number for our median, we don't use that one at all now. Okay, so it's a little bit different than the first problem we did. All right, so crossing out, and I have 2, which are the same, so I have 3. 3 is my quartile 1, which is the lower quartile. Okay, and then we want to identify that 2 is our minimum, or the lower extreme. Okay. Now we're going to do the upper section of our data. And so again, we're going to find the median of the upper half. So again, leaving out the median because there was only one. I'm going to start with the next 5. And we have 2, so that gives us 7.5, halfway between 7 and 8. And that is quartile 3, which is our upper quartile. Okay. And then we want to identify our maximum, which is the upper extreme. Okay, so we have our 5 numbers that we need to make our box and whisker plot. The minimum, quartile 1, quartile 2, quartile 3, and the maximum. So let's go ahead and graph our box and whisker plot. So we're going to put a point up above our number line for each of our 5 numbers. Okay. And then I always start with my whiskers. So from the outside to the next one, from the outside to the next one. And then your box is the inner 3 and a line through the median. And then you need a title. I'm going to put my title on the bottom this time because I'm kind of squished together. All right. Okay. So let's talk about those percents again because that's really important. So on our percents, from 2 to the 5, that's 50% of your data. We found the median, which divides our data in half. So 50% on the bottom, 50% on the top. Okay? And then we took each 50% and found its median. So we divided it into 25% and 25%. Then we did that same thing with the upper section of our data. So we divided it into 25% and 25%. Okay? So then what that looks like on our box and whisker plot is that our whiskers, again, are 25% of our data. Each section of the box is 25% of the data. Okay? And then the whole box, which is your interquartile range. Interquartile range is 50% of your data. Okay, it's always like that. All right? So, if I were to say what percent of your data is above 3? 3 is right here. 75% of your data is above 3. What percent of your data is below 5? 5 is the median, so 50% of my data is below the 5. And those are the kinds of questions you're going to need to answer when you're looking at a box and whisker plot. Or they may say, compare a couple of box and whisker plots. And so you might compare the medians. One median is higher than the other. Or you might compare the interquartile range. And so the interquartile range is 4 on this one because it's 3 to 7. So you might compare that one with the interquartile range of another box and whisker plot. So just some examples of questions you might be asked about the box and whisker plot. That's all I have. I hope that this lesson was very helpful for you. I really enjoy doing box and whisker plots because it's just all about finding the medians, which is really pretty easy. So if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to shoot me a message, and I'll help you out as best I can. See you guys later. Bye.